Well, welcome Shirley. Thank you. This is going to be different for us both. I think we'll do this, haven't we? We're going to be doing back and forth, and it's going to be a swinging microphone. Shirley Pye, thank you for coming and joining us. Thank you for being willing to talk about this wonderful book, From Sinking Sands to Solid Rock. Don't mind all my little markers. We're not going on that many pages, but it's a fantastic read, and it's, as Ned said, it's a brave thing to open up your life to the scrutiny, I suppose, of other people and to people who hadn't known that about you before. But we really appreciate it, and I've really got a lot out of this book, so thank you. Yep.
Sorry.
No, that's quite all right, Peter. Just keep crawling in, that's fine. So here we are. I'm going to have a go at walking through this book, and I don't know how much we'll get through, and if we don't cover enough of it, then I encourage you to get hold of the book. I think you've actually run out. We need to do a reprint. We need to do a reprint, but I'm sure we can borrow Len books out until then, but it's really worth the read. So, Shirley, the very first question is really, what led you to write your autobiography, and why now?
Well, it was during the first lockdown of COVID. Someone had given me a laptop, and I was fiddling around on the laptop, and then I thought, well, I wonder if I could write a book.
As you do. As you do.
And I just thought, seeing the things that I've experienced, if it could just help one person with the struggles they're having in their life, that would be worth doing. But I still, as I was even doing it, I thought nothing's going to come out of this. This is just for me, and I wasn't sure. Anyway, I went to River Valley Church one day, and a friend of mine, who Ruthie knows, Coral, has just written a book, and it was like a confirmation when she started talking about her book. I thought, yeah, this is what I've got to do. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's not just for you, is it?
No, it's not.
No. And it reminded me when you're saying, even if I can just do, sorry, brain's so wrong. I'm getting sick of this. Even if I can just help one person, it reminds me of the the story of the one lost sheep, and how the shepherd goes out just for that one lost sheep, and how worth it is to Jesus. So it sure is going to be worth a lot in doing this, and I know it's going to be more than one. So so COVID has we have a lot to be grateful for then for COVID, yes, which is great. Yes, thank you. But can you explain the title, From Sinking Sands to Solid Rock, and how you came to choose that?
There's verse Matthew 7:24. No,
yes,
24 to 27.
Yeah.
Talks about the wise man building his house on the rock, and how the house didn't collapse, where the foolish man built his house on the sand. And you know what happened to that? There's another one in Psalm, you'll have to tell me.
18. 18 too.
Yeah, Jesus is a rock and the horn of thy salvation. Yeah. And So
what did that first scripture, what was it saying to you about the rock and the sand? What was it saying to you?
Well, it refers to Jesus as the rock. So you've got to cling to the rock. In all circumstances. Okay,
and that becomes very important.
Yeah.
In all our lives.
True. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Shirley, you obviously, they were very significant verses to you, so you include them in here. You do that only on 2 occasions where you actually write in 2 sections some scriptures out in full. So I'm going to read them now because I think they're pretty important. So Matthew, as Shirley said, therefore, if anyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who builds his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, must have been the Yarra Valley with the rain, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. And it's very obvious then. And then Psalm 18:2 says, the Lord is my rock my fortress and my deliverer. My God is my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield, and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. And so you look at the sinking sands in your life, and you know that you're going to come up some huge obstacles that really knock you, and you look to God as the rock, the one you need to cling to in the hard times. Okay, so this is where you start off. This is where you leap into the story. So talk about finding your rock, because you do mention that throughout the book. You come back to that analogy, you come back to the title, you come back to the sinking sands and the rock. So it's quite it's themed throughout the book. But first of all, can you tell us, your mother went to Lilydale, so you're a Valley girl through and through.
I was born in Lilydale.
That's right, so you're a Valley girl. Can you tell us firstly about your mother's faith and then what that meant to you, and then how you first made a commitment to Jesus and how it changed your life?
Right. Yeah, probably when I was about 10. Oh, I'm not sure how old I was. Mum started going to Lilydale Baptist Church, and we lived on a farm which was right out of Lilydale, so it wasn't like I had a lot of friends to play with, and I think Mum wanted me to go to Sunday school so I could meet friends, and I thought this was pretty unfair, seeing I had to go to school through the week and then now I have to go to school on Sunday. That's the way I thought about it. So I went to Sunday school and met some friends and started learning about Jesus, and not that I really took a lot in, I don't think. It was probably later on when I went to youth group, we'd go to all... Do you want to talk about this now?
Yes, please. Please.
We started to go in different events, hearing different evangelists, and my dad used to like watching The Rifleman with Chuck Connors, and Johnny Crawford was his son, Mark, I think, in the show. Anyway, we were going to go and watch a film at the Box Hill Town Hall, and Johnny Crawford was going to be there and give his testimony, and I thought, well, I've never seen anybody famous before, this is pretty good. So we went, and he gave his testimony. Can't even tell you what he spoke about that night. I don't even remember. But I know it had an effect on me. And at the end of it, they played O Lamb of God I Come. And I went down with a friend and walked out the front. And, here I am.
Wow. And so how did it change your life at that point?
Well, it was like this, I don't know, all this weight lift, even though I was young. I was probably about 14 or 13 or something. I remember we stopped, the youth group leader decided we'd all go in and have something to eat at the Ringwood Bowling Alley, if you remember that. We parked a fair way away from the bowling alley, and my friend said, let's run up, I'll race you. And I started to run, and it was like I had to put my feet firmly on the ground because it was like I was going to fly. It was like, it was a scary feeling. It was a good feeling, but it was a scary feeling. And she just looked at me and said, it feels good, doesn't it?
So you had a tangible evidence of something that had just occurred. Fantastic.
It's pretty good.
I know. So you said that. You said you feel so light, like a whole weight had been taken off my shoulders. Yeah, that's pretty amazing, isn't it? It's a great sensation, that. And you have one later on in the book, which we'll get to, where you describe another scene. But we'll get to that one in a little while. So you grew up in Lilydale, as you said.
Yep.
And you were at school and didn't have a lot of people to play with on the farm. You were one of 6 children, and as I recall,
the youngest.
that you're the youngest of 6 children, and they were between 5 and 15 years older than you. Is that correct? Yeah. So basically, when you were playing around at home, they're all gone to school or even working by that stage. So you literally had no one else. So it was just you and your mum a lot of the time, and your dad, I guess.
And my imagination.
and your imagination, which is very vivid. You've got to have a vivid imagination to write a book. Although it's not imagination, this is all true, isn't it? It's all,
Yeah, but I had to make up friends because I had none.
yeah, that's
Yeah, but we won't talk about that.
Is one of them sitting with us now? Okay. No. So you became a Christian and you experienced a tangible sensation. You felt great, you felt good, you knew something had changed, you knew there had been an exchange. But the sinking sands, they're never very far away, are they? No. Can you tell us a few about some of those experiences? I think you had some maybe at school and in your first job.
Yeah. I think because of the way I felt, I thought all the kids at school would just understand, you know. So I'd go to school and talk about Jesus and, oh, don't tell us about that, you know. It was pretty, a letdown. We had a group when I went to high school, we were at high school, called ISCF, which is Inter-School Christian Fellowship, and Alan Meyer, who you'd all probably know from Mount Evelyn, he was my typing teacher.
Isn't that great?
And he started this ISCF off, and he wanted a few of us to give a testimony at school. And my friend that had gone forward with me said, "Why don't you do it?" You know? And I said, "Oh yeah, this is a good opportunity to get up there and talk about Jesus in front of all my friends." And well, the day, then all these, Alan would be putting signs up all over the school, you know, these people are going to give their testimonies on Tuesday at 1 o'clock, I still remember the time.
Yeah. Wow.
And
that's setting you up, isn't it?
Yeah, not good. So, I walked into this, I'd gone through it the night before, I'd written it all out. I'd walked into the classroom where it was going to be that day, and it was packed of people. Like, normally when there was just a few of us, like when we had our meetings once a week or whatever, it was only about 8 of us, but there was no room to sit. Well, my confidence went out the window. When they called me up, my mouth was dry. It didn't sound like me. I went to grab my paper out of my pocket, and I had ribbons and hair clips, and they all fell on the floor, and I made a hash of it. Everybody else went good though.
Yeah, so you didn't feel so good. You felt a bit like you were sinking a bit at that point.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was sunk.
What about the childcare situation there with the job? You got a job in the childcare centre, and it was a job that you loved. Yeah,
it was. Where are we going with this one?
Well, just about the experience of things not always going as positive as you expected. And when you first become a Christian, you think everything's rosy, but you had some experiences that didn't always go right.
Oh, there was a few. The guys that used to pick. I used to walk from. The childcare was a fair way away from the Ringwood station, so I used to walk from the childcare to the station at night. And there was a guy that picked me up, and I thought, I recognise him, but I just, and he was one of the fathers. He'd come and picked his son up and taken him home, and then was waiting down the street for me to come out. And there was a few sleazy guys.
Which you don't expect in childcare, do you?
No, you don't.
No, not there yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think they would have come off worse if they had tried anything.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so you left school at 14, and then said you went into childcare.
No, I didn't.
Oh, was it? Oh, no, was it later than that?
16.
16. I beg your pardon.
Yeah,
That was That was Jared, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So 16, and went into childcare, real estate, and then finally.
You're at Glen Motors.
That's right. Okay, you meet the love of your life, Eddie, and you're both very young. You fall in love.
I was young.
Yeah, yes, you were very young. Okay, Eddie was 26 years older. Okay, Now, then you have two lovely children, Andrea, there's one of them here, thank you, and Andrea's son Will. And you have Andrea first, and 4 years later you have Jared.
Yep.
And at this stage, you live your life, you actually lived your life at this stage in your life away from the church. So you sort of drifted a bit from that early enthusiasm at age 14.
Oh, we walked away from the Lord.
Yeah, okay.
We did our own thing.
Yeah, okay. So despite what you knew and despite how you felt, you say that God was still actively working in your life. And I'll just quote this here because you say, we still knew that God was real.
Yeah.
There was no way we could doubt it. We'd experienced that unconditional love, but had walked away from church and anything to do with Christianity. But we know that we had left God, but He hadn't left us. And that's, I guess that's the key to it, isn't it?
Sorry.
That's okay, just take your time. So He hadn't left us, and He still had His hand on us. And that's quite an amazing statement when you're actually not actively engaging with God, but you knew that He still had His hand on you. So you're living your life knowing that you've walked away, but that God is still in there. And then can you tell me, Eddie's son, your stepson, Eddie Jr., started going to church.
He did.
And what happened then?
Sorry.
That's okay, you're right.
Yeah.
What happened then?
Just joke. While we were still living, we managed a big poultry farm in the 80s in Yarra Junction. Eddie and his wife at the time, Ruth, started going to the Alliance Church that was held at the Gladdesdale Hall at Gladdesdale, and he kept saying, "Come on, Dad, will you come to church with me?" And, no, if you want to go to church, that's your business. Good on your son, but don't, I'm not going. and there was a few arguments, and he says, like young Eddie said that, we used to go to church all the time. When we were kids, we had to go, and so that went on for a while.
Didn't it? Yeah.
And then Eddie sort of laid off, young Eddie laid off. Then we moved to Powtown in 1988.
Yeah.
And then Eddie had asked him again to go. So, he decided he'd go, and he didn't say much to me. Then he went the next week, and then he went the week after. And I thought, well, only good can come out of this because, he'd been drinking a fair bit. And, then he told me about it and how he'd come back to the Lord, and then he'd go out all the time to Bible studies and to anything that was on to do with the church. And I thought, well, he may as well be at the pub because I'm sitting at home still. And then, it was a while before I wasn't going to make a decision. He said, "Come with me." I said, "No, you do. You go, but it was a while later that I decided to.
So we've seen evidence then that God still had His hand on you, even though you two had walked away. He used Eddie Jr. and probably other things to bring Eddie husband back.
Yeah.
But as you said, you were sitting there thinking, no thanks, I'm not ready yet.
Yeah.
But something did happen again that gave evidence of God's hand in your life. I think most of us can relate to the fact that sometimes in our life we'll have money worries, as when we're married. Most couples do, and you were no different. And can you tell us about the time when you received a big bill in the mail with no means to pay it?
We had a big phone bill. There was quite a few of us living up there at the time. There was Eddie's son Gary and a couple of them, and we were all using the phone. Anyway, we got this big bill. And I just walked into the caravan and thought, how are we going to pay this? And I had a cry. And I noticed the little Gideon's Bible that either Andrea or Jared had brought home from school. and in the back of it, it's got all these headings for what you want to look up. And there was a thing under worry, which took me to Matthew 6:25-34, about do not worry about, I can't recite it all.
That's okay.
But it reminded me, and then as a child I watched a movie called Lilies of the Field, and Sidney Poitier was in it. And I remember him reading that. So I think because of the movie, and it just meant a lot to me. And it just gave me a peace that I wasn't to worry about it. Yeah. And I haven't told you this bit, but probably a week later there was an anonymous check in the mail.
Fantastic.
Just about the same to cover it. Yeah.
So that again was another opportunity for you to see God still having his hand around you. I'll read those scriptures out if you like, because again these are the only ones that she writes. And in the book Shirley says, I'll write all these verses because it is important and I don't want to leave any out. So the scripture that was speaking to at that point, out of nowhere, Jesus says in Matthew 6 verses 25, therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow? They do not labour or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendour was dressed like one of these. If this is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the pagans run after all these things, and your heavenly Father know that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. And that was a reality for you at that stage, wasn't it? Yeah. So,
and then I wasn't long after that. I think I was in the caravan one night and just prayed and
So I was going to actually ask you.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. But I was going to ask you. There are many ways that people come to faith. I mean, Eddie was invited by his son to keep going to church. It was like a nagging invitation to come, and that was one of the ways that Eddie got there. And for many of us, we respond to a direct challenge. We come back through a crisis. Others through invitations to church, like Eddie. Persistent friendship, perhaps for some people. Some through witnessing. Some through seeing signs and wonders. And I suspect that God knows what each of us needs. And by this point, as you said, Eddie had made his recommitment, but you were holding out. So what was it that you needed, do you think?
What did I need? Peace, because we were arguing all the time.
And you got that
We'd
peace.
gone different ways. We hadn't gone different ways, but I was just quiet, and everybody had gone to sleep, and I was in the caravan one night, and I decided just to pray that, I'm not going to fight this anymore.
Because you felt you were fighting God?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't winning.
Yeah.
So
you knew he was there, and you knew you hadn't actually really left him. You just turned your back.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah. Yes. And the next morning I walked out. We used to have a lot of king parrots and that around, and we were in Powelltown, and it was pretty out there. But when I opened the caravan, it was just more beautiful than it was the day before. The birds were more colourful and the trees were more greener, and it was good.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Another tangible, physical evidence that something had changed in your life again.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love the way you describe that in here too. You say that everything seems so beautiful, and then you even saw people differently.
Yeah.
Which is a really special thing too, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I've heard Ned talked about when he made a commitment too, and how he looked up, went from when he was in the church, he turned around and the whole room was so bright. So it's obviously some very special people get to have that tangible evidence that something has changed, that Jesus has entered into your life. Fantastic. Okay, so your life, your lives now take on a new direction. You get involved in church life, and you even put together a massive Easter outreach festival. Do you want to just talk a bit about that? That's quite an amazing thing.
There was 6 or 7 couples of us that started to attend fusion meetings in the city, and that's when they were doing their Easter Awakening festivals. And I remember Clive and, I don't know if you know them, Clive and Aggie Halls and Neville and Ann Adams and Eddie and I were on the way back from the city one night and said, let's do this in Yarra Junction. Well, I said that's an impossibility because it's only 6 weeks away. How could you put on a big festival when we don't know anything about festivals? Anyway, we all went around to the different churches, and all the churches were keen about it. We went to the butchers, and they said, yeah, we'll donate sausages, and Woolworths donated bread, and there'd been raining all week, I think, and that day it was a beautiful day, and there was 5,000 people there.
Fantastic.
And everything was free. It was a time for families to come and not spend anything. So we did that every year for, I don't know how long, about 6 years maybe.
What an amazing thing to be doing it, and just recommitted your life, and you get stuck into it, boots and all. That's take my hat off to you. That's fantastic. Eddie's getting back involved with God Squad, which is particularly precious to him and humbling, given his involvement in its conception here in the Yarra Valley, and he's involved in mission in the Yarra Valley with them. Your son Jared makes a commitment to Jesus through some school ministry, and
well, I'd forgotten to.
Yeah, and at some point, Ron Williams comes out as a ministry, and Shirley, as we were talking the other day, told me about a painting that this Indigenous man gave to Jared in particular, and there's an inscription on the back. This is very, very significant and very special. Would you like to share it with us?
Firstly, Ron took an interest in Jared. I don't know, they got on really well, and Jared he decided that he'd go and catch some big freshwater crays, and he put them in a bucket, and Eddie took him down and he gave them to Ron, and Ron was really impressed. Then I think it was the next visit back, Ron, the Aboriginal ladies had made this spark painting, and on the back of it Ron wrote, to Jared, kangaroos jump forward and so should we. They don't like to be fenced in, they want to be free. The truth shall make you free. With love and greetings, your friend Ron. Do you want me to explain about the...
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, we had that for quite some time, and while we were down in Gippsland, Eddie noticed it had all gone black, and even the plastic it was like a big burn mark in the mountain, and we just thought, well, something's fallen on it, or I don't know, didn't know what happened to it, but now there's nothing. It's just back the way it was. Yeah.
And that will become significant as we go further.
Yeah, well also, Ron, while we were down in the Gippsland, he was dying of cancer. So I don't know if that was that during that time
Yeah.
or what, but yeah.
It's something you observe.
Mm,
Okay.
yeah.
So it's very special to have that now as a reminder, and so things are going really great, and you're counting your blessings, and I think that during this next phase, both your children, Andrea and Jared, meet their future partners, Misty and Evan, and then in January 1996, Eddie gets a phone call from overseas, from the other side of the world, out of the blue, that gives you both the opportunity of a lifetime and leaves you thanking God for such blessings. Can you tell us about that?
Mm. Yeah, Eddie's family were in England. He'd come out here when he was 21, and he had a sister that had gone to America to live, and the rest of the family were in England, and so we had contact with them a fair bit. And he gets this phone call, and I could hear him talking, and Jared and I are standing there listening, and he mentioned Silver Black, and Jared says, "Who's Silver Black?" And I said, "Oh, she was a singer back in the 60s, you know,
Yeah, our
really,
generation, I know.
really well known, you know." And he says, "Well, what's Dad talking about, Silver Black?" I said, "I don't know." Anyway, I could hear Eddie saying, "Yes, I know Silver, yes, yeah, okay." And then he hangs up the phone and he looks at me and says, "Who's Silver Black?" And I said, "Well, you're just telling this woman that you knew, or whoever you're talking to." And he said, "Well, they want us to go to England for a reunion with the family," because he hadn't seen his family. Well, he'd seen his mum since he'd been out here, but not the rest of them.
And tell us what the Silver Black thing was. She did a
That
TV
was a
show.
reunion. It was called Surprise, Surprise.
Yeah.
And they wanted to get us over to England, and also his sister from America and her husband to England. And the brother in England and the other sister knew about what was happening, but Eddie had a younger sister that he'd never met before that was born after he'd come out here. So his mother and that sister didn't know anything about it.
So tell us what happened. How did you get to that that day? How did it work out?
Oh, well, they put us in. We were in London in a hotel. We all met at the studios the next day, and yeah, they called each family, like they called Eddie and the two sisters out because they were in the audience. Now, one of the sisters knew about this, but Eddie, his mum and his other sister didn't. And then she was saying about how you've had your family have not been in the same room together, ever, you know. And then she brought the one from America out, Anne, and then Frank from and Scylla said to his mum, "Now you've got a son in Australia," and she says yes, yeah. And yes, he's in Australia, and she said, "No, he's not, he's here."
Yeah.
And she just couldn't believe it.
How amazing.
Yeah. So they brought Eddie out then.
Wow.
Yeah.
What an amazing opportunity.
Oh, it was great. We were over there for 2 months, staying with different members of the family. And he met God Squad over there, met Sean over there, and yeah. He was in his glee.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So that was an opportunity that you would never have dreamt about.
No.
The show was called Surprise, Surprise.
Yeah, it was.
And it's like this is your life. That's what it reminds me of, obviously. What an amazing, what a blessing.
Yeah.
And you many times really acknowledge that God is blessing you with this opportunity to reconnect with Eddie's family, which you haven't met most of them. I think his mother, but not anyone else.
No.
So on your return to Australia, I mean, it's hard to come back after 2 months of this fame and fortune and being on TV, international TV, because I think you guys back here watched it, or didn't you, by tape? You watched it over here. You remember Ducky and Ricky probably watched it too, did you? You don't remember it? No, okay, I'll have to dig it out and watch it again. So on your return, Andrea gets married.
No. Actually, we
Oh,
found out.
no, I put this in about a poetic license.
Trying to make you
No, I wasn't actually. I was just no. But you have two grandchildren. So Jared has well, first of all, Andrea, you have your daughter, and then Miss
Jared and Misty
Yes.
have a daughter.
yes,
Yeah.
Okay, so Andrea's married, and first of all, you have two grandchildren born, just 7 months apart.
Yes.
So you've got two little granddaughters, Jordan and Brody. So let's get that right. So okay, Jordan and Brody, and but your joy is short-lived, and tragedy strikes your family in November 1997.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to talk
Mm-hmm.
to us about what happened then?
Yep.
Actually, there was a big God Squad meeting on that day, that night. Eddie had gone down to Bayswater, wasn't it? Yep. And I get a call from Andrea, and she, Evan, Andrea's husband, and Misty, Jared's girlfriend at the time, both worked at the garage on the top of the hill in Launching Place. They'd worked on different shifts, and Andrea had rang and said, Misty's just rang Evan and he's run out of the door. Didn't know where he got, and he was stressed and didn't want to tell her. And anyway, I'd rang the garage and to find if I could speak to either Misty or Evan, but neither of them were there, and whoever answered the phone just said, no, they're not here. Something bad's happened and somebody's been shot. And I had to ask who it was, and I knew really, and he said, oh, it was Jared. And I didn't know what to do, where to go, don't know where Jared was. I didn't want to ring Andrea and tell her that what had happened, and I was in the bedroom, and I knew I had to get on to Eddie, and thankfully, thanks to the Lord, that we had somebody staying with us at the time, so I wasn't alone in the house. I wouldn't want to hear that. Didn't want to hear it anyway. But so this man had rang. I think he rang Mark Billing, and Mark put Eddie on the phone, and because Eddie didn't have a mobile those days. And then he said, I'm coming home. And in the meantime, somebody had rang, and I heard our friend repeat what this person on the other end of the phone is saying. So I knew Jared was not with us any longer. And then the police turned up, and the story of
It's up to you.
Jared and his friends, or so-called friends, had been swimming that day, and they'd had a few to drink, and they'd gone back to this friend's house, and the guy, well, the apparent friend of Jared's, kept ordering Jared to go and get marijuana for him, and he didn't want to do it, and he was the only one there with the car, so he was asked to do it, and Jared said, no, I'm not doing it. So the guy tried to strangle him at the time, and then a friend of both of theirs took Jared back to his house, which was next door to this guy's, and said, maybe you should go home. And Jared says, I've never argued with him before, I'm not leaving like this, I don't like to leave like this. So he went back to the house, and the guy confronted him and said, well, are you going to go and do it? And he said, no, that's not what I'm here for. So then he went and got a gun out of the ceiling and shot Jared. And he was killed instantly. I'm all right.
That's pretty hard. That's pretty hard for the whole family.
Yeah.
It's a devastating, tragic event that you can't predict. How do you move on? How do you move on from something like this, and how hard is it to move on. How hard was it for you?
Well, I do remember saying when I was hearing this back before the police arrived, you know, you just can't take my son. I was saying to God. And then but I don't blame God for that. And I know that during that night, Eddie said, is it something we've done? Is it when we, you know, when we did the wrong thing? Is it? I said, God doesn't work like that. God doesn't. No, he doesn't work like that. And I said, he gives man a free will. He gave this man a choice, and his choice was to take Jared's life. He caused that. God didn't cause that. I don't know why it happened. I know that God could have stopped it, but I believe that when we're with Jesus, we'll see the bigger picture. Yeah, but we had people everywhere praying for us, all God squad over the world, and in the valley, lots of people praying and doing things for us and being there for us. And we had the hope of seeing our son again. Yeah. I don't know how people cope with it, don't have a faith. Yeah.
So we're seeing the grace of God in the timing of this whole event too, that you and Eddie had a time to come back to the Lord and get your lives into a position where Jared was influenced as well, and he'd made some commitment, and we have that a great token reminder. And so I guess when you, at the time that doesn't really sit with you, but you look back and perhaps put these things together, what if anything gave you comfort at all? How did you get on? How do you put one foot forward? How do you do it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I just, knowing Jesus, you know there's life after death, and I know that I'll see Jared again. I always prayed for a vision that I might see him and talk to him and dream about him, and I dreamed about him a lot, but the vision never happened. But Misty was left with a little girl, Jared's little girl, 6 months old. She was 6 months old when he died. So that was another blessing. So grandchildren are a real blessing.
Thank you. So really that's how you, I guess you don't know how you do it, but you just do it. You get up and you go to bed, and you get up and you go to bed, and you start to maybe notice blessings along the way, and Brody was definitely a significant one there.
And Geordie and Brody.
That's right, we had two 7 months apart. It
Yeah.
was hard for all of you at that stage. There was two little babies in the family. So you do get on, both of you. You do pick yourselves up, and you start a church. You start a church in the Yarra Valley, and this is Ned mentioned this before, and that's where, just as a bit of background, I guess, we call this Open Door at Zach's place. Tell us what the name of the church was that you and Eddie started.
The Open Door.
So that's why Ned, having been aware of all that, felt that it was really important when this church was relaunched, or we started it, that really to pay respect and be respectful for what you and Eddie pioneered. This is the Open Door in Zach's place. You've explained that before, so it's very special.
Yeah.
It's very special, and you're very special to us.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So you started church, and the next 17 years, you're involved very heavily in the lives of your grandchildren, and that's what really makes a big difference and gives you a lot of joy, and I can attest to that at the moment with some lovely grandchildren living with us too. And not only Jordan and Brody, but Angel and Will, who's with us today, assistant brother to Jordan, and also Chloe and Kayla, who are half sisters, and also Taylor, half sisters to Brody.
Yeah, Misty.
Repartnered,
repartnered,
and
had 4 more children.
That's right. So we had Kayla and Taylor, Tyler, sorry, and then Seth. And Chloe, half brothers and half sisters. And you built a lifetime of wonderful memories with them down on this poultry farm in Gippsland that you've talked about in your book quite a lot, and it's great memories there. At the back of the book is the poem. Shirley, when did you write this poem for this book, or had you written this before?
No, after it.
After you read the book, you wrote this poem. Okay, I'll just read this poem in the back of the book. It's called From Sinking Sands to Solid Rock. Memories can be a blessing, and sometimes they can hurt. We need to focus on the good times, and from the bad we must divert. Time goes by so swiftly, doesn't wait for anyone. We must make every second count and show love to everyone. We never know what life may bring. It may bring joy or maybe sorrow. But keep your eye on our loving God, for he will bring sunshine for tomorrow. So as we go through sinking sands, we must remember what to do. We must cling tight to Jesus the rock, for he will surely carry you through. Sadly, you didn't know how much time you had left with your precious granddaughter Jordan, Andrea's eldest child, who lost her life in a freak car accident just 3 weeks short of her 17th birthday. But you seem to have made every second count in her life. Can you tell us, Shirley, how you got through this second major loss in your life?
Don't know. Andrea come and told us that night that happened. Just think, not again. This can't be going on again. All I can say how do you get through it is to keep praying and knowing that that's not the end, that you'll see them again. Why these things happen, I don't know. I'm not going to pretend I know. Only God knows. And like I said before, I believe we'll see the bigger picture. But Geordie was a beautiful girl. We had a lot of good times when they used to come down to the farm on holidays. Her and Brody used to play tricks on me. I remember one time I was hanging out the washing and they were giggling and I said, "What are you laughing at?" And, "Oh, well, nothing." And they'd run away. And I went to pick some washing out of the basket to hang up and there's a big rubber spider on the top of the... and they were running away laughing. Yeah. But Will used to pinch Granddad's torch, get under the bed with it, and when he'd get up through the night, the torch would be flat. Just embarrassing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You're getting carried away here.
So it's memories, isn't it? It's those memories that really... You mentioned in the book here, shortly after you lose Jared, that Eddie is a great comfort, and he says what to you about Jared?
He said, "You're the only one that's got the privilege of being Jared's mother." And that really, I thought, that was a big comfort, and no one else had that privilege. So,
And likewise, Andrea was the only one who had the privilege of being Jordan's mum, and you're the only one who had the privilege of being that grandmother at that time, and had all those very special memories with her, which is very special. So that was 2013, and a lot has happened to you during 2013 and a few years prior. In a very short number of years, a lot of things have happened in addition to the loss of Jordan. You sell the property in Gippsland that you spent so much time on, and you moved back to the valley. Eddie's son Ed has died from a brain tumour in 2010. At age 55. Your Eddie's health deteriorates with as yet undiagnosed throat cancer. And Jared's killer has been released from jail in 2010. Now, Eddie had been able to forgive the man who shot Jared very quickly, which didn't sit well with you at first. What's been your experience in trying to follow what you believe is our faith's teaching on forgiving those who hurt or offend us?
Well, I wasn't going to forgive this guy, no matter what. I thought I could forgive anybody for anything, but not him. My biggest thing was, I don't know if I'm answering your question properly, but communion, I think. That was what was always there. When people would talk about forgiveness before you come and get communion, well, I still felt I needed to take communion because I believe that draws you closer to God. And I believe God knew how I felt and he loved me through it. But there was and I wasn't going to forgive because everybody's standing there saying you should forgive, because no, I wasn't going to do that. Do you want me to talk about
Well, how do you think God viewed the journey that you're on? The thing you say at one point, you always knew that maybe one day you would, but you didn't want to.
No.
So how do you think God saw that?
I looked at, if I come to the point of forgiving him, what am I doing to Jared? What would Jared think of me? Which was the wrong, probably, way of thinking it.
But that was what was holding you back?
Yeah. I would be doing him an injustice.
And how do you think God saw that? What do you think God felt about that?
Oh, like I said,
He understood.
Yeah. Well, he knew how I was feeling.
That's right.
Yeah. And it was the God Squad Women's Weekend.
Yeah, okay. So, well, can you tell us about that? How you eventually forgave the man who took your only son, and how did you feel any different after you had forgiven him?
Yeah, well, we had a camp up at Caspalotti in Millgrove, and actually it was after communion on the Sunday before we went home that, I was just talking to Di Desma about it, and I said if I did that, I'd be doing Jared an injustice. And she said, Jared wouldn't think like that, don't you? Or something like that. I prayed with a few ladies around, and I never thought those words would ever come out of my mouth. But and now when I have communion, I know there's nothing. There's nothing in between me and God. Yeah.
So you actually feel tangibly different.
Yeah. But at the same time, he knew how I felt all those years. Yeah.
When you and I were just chatting on the other day about this, we were talking about this and how much pressure sometimes you can come under by well-meaning people to say you must forgive. The Bible says this, and yet I think we both agreed with the fact that forgiveness is a process.
Yeah.
And it can take a time and a length of time, and the timing was right for you when you were able to come to that place with God. Prior to that, you weren't able to, and as you say, God understood, but it's never an easy thing, and no one should ever put that pressure on you.
No. Can I just talk about
please.
that? In saying that I've forgiven him, it doesn't condone what he's done is right. I mean, God is a judge. I'm not a judge, thank goodness. Yeah, so when you're saying you're forgiving someone, you're not saying, well, that was all right that you did that. It freed me. It gave me a release, freed me. Yeah. So.
And that's the key, isn't it? I think we often do falsely think that forgiveness is for the person who's committed the horrific offence and caused us so much hurt, but forgiveness is actually all about us and our heart and letting go of that and giving it back to the judge, which is hard to do, isn't it? Because you want to keep the memory too with you, and there's a lot of that going on. So we've skipped forward a bit here, but I just thought it was important to talk about the forgiveness here and timeline, because that was only in 2019, and I remember Shirley coming in here and sharing that with us, and I was just observing to Shirley that after that I saw a significant boldness coming to your life, and of course she's gone ahead and written this book and written poems to people, and I think that's my phone chiming. Anyway, not sure why. So I really saw a change and a release in your life too, which is fantastic. Eddie passes away the following year. This is now going back to after Andrea's lost her daughter Jordan, and the following year Eddie passes away.
Yep.
And the sinking sands seem to be sucking the very life out of you too. But again, it seems that God is very close and never leaves you. Help comes this time in the form of some advice from a counsellor. Can you tell us how she helped you through this major loss, what it was that she shared with you that helped you?
Actually, you know, Deb Wood, she's a counsellor too, and I used to see Deb a lot then, and she suggested that I see this lady. She put me onto her in Mount Evelyn, and she's a Christian counsellor. She had this. I thought, why see a counsellor? It's not going to change anything. It's not going to bring anybody back. But after Eddie died, I felt like you're crying for one and you're not crying for the other, and there's guilt and all the three deaths sort of come to the surface, and it was a bit overwhelming. I agreed to go to this counsellor, and she did a lot of things. Some were weird, and I didn't know why she was doing them, and I couldn't understand it. But there was one thing that she talked about, was having a shipping container with a big lock. And I had a lot of images that I couldn't get out of my head that I didn't want to have. What could have happened to Joe? So she talked about the shipping container, going to it, undoing the lock, opening up the big door, and putting all this bad stuff into it, and then closing it, putting the lock on. So I had to go over that a few times, and that seemed to help.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Is that advice you've shared with other people?
No.
Okay, well you have now. That's great.
Yeah.
That really helped. Fantastic. I love the way you experience God's peace at various times in your life too. And you mentioned that a few times in here as well. You experience God's perfect peace and feel His blessing in your life. And in particular, you experienced it shortly after Eddie has passed away, and you move into a home on your own in Three Bridges. Can you explain that night, how you felt?
We were told this little bungalow, granny flat was available, and I thought, don't know about this, but it ends up that it was people I knew that their kids went to school with Jared, and so they knew me, so they said that we'll only let someone in there that we know. And it was like I kept, like I looked at a lot of houses in the area and there was nothing, and I said to God, I've really got to know when I walk in the door that I'm going to feel at home, that I'll know it's what it's meant to be. And I hadn't felt that with anything. And when I walked into that granny flat, I mean, it was 2 bedrooms and it was just, yeah. And like the lady kept saying to me, now, just go home and think about it. Don't have to rush into it. And I said, no, I'm not, I'd like it. Oh, no, don't tell me now. So the next morning I got up and rang her and I said, I really want it. So they were happy to take me, yeah. And it's affordable, yeah, and I'm really happy there.
And you said that when you moved in that very first night, you had this experience
sorry.
of perfect, no, that's okay, perfect peace, which was unusual and not expected, given you're in the middle of nowhere. Really, Three Bridges is not exactly in a safe, like, you know, populated.
There was 4 dogs in
there were
back.
4 dogs, but it was the perfect peace that you experienced, and I think that's it's wonderful. Recently, we've had the poem Footprints brought to us here and read to us in here, Zach's by Sabine Lister, who passed away shortly after. And the line in Footprints that catches my eye at the moment is where at the end of the poem it says, only one set of footprints. Jesus is saying there was only one set of footprints during the saddest and most troublesome times of life. And it was then that Jesus carried us. Which is, of course, very similar to the last line in your poem, which is where you say, for he, Jesus, will surely carry you through. Jesus will carry us in the hard times, and you've obviously, Shirley, experienced being carried by Jesus through some significant grief and loss. And this book certainly is about heartache and tragedy, but also hope and a faith that brings you peace at these unexpected moments. And as you said, well, why don't you tell us about the when people say you can heal, what your response to that is?
It makes me angry, actually. People talk about healing. I liken to losing somebody, like if you lose a leg, you don't grow another one. You learn to live with it, I guess, but I don't understand healing. Don't like the expression at all, and I don't like the expression move on. You've got to move on. Yeah, that's, yeah. Sorry, but
no, that's really good. So in other words, I think we need to be re-educated in some ways when people have suffered a loss. You know, you're not going to forget that. And Andrew, we were talking about that too earlier with your loss of Jordan. You don't ever want to forget. You can't grow that leg back. You can't grow that child back, that son, that daughter. And you will always miss that child. And you don't want to move past it, but you learn to live with that, and your life takes on a completely different life, and it can still be beautiful. And you know, Shirley, your life is a great testament to that, and I know Andrew's very proud of you, and we're very proud of you, and it's just wonderful to have you share this with us. You're an inspiration to me, and I'm sure to many others. I've got no doubt of that. You've not let life's hard knocks, which seem to be inevitable for all of us, I guess, steal your faith and rob you of the joy of knowing God. So Shirley, thank you, Shirley Pye. Thank you for giving us, sharing your heart with us today and being open to this. We're going to finish up now listening to the song that Shirley is very, very special to Shirley, and it's called "On Christ the Solid Rock I Stand," which is the story of your life too.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you.
Thank you.